connection. Oh, if I do say so myself. Looks like me in the past. This is funny, I'm just watching myself. And I'm going to start recording as well. So, welcome to the inaugural How to Learn Music workshop. Today I've just been sorting out the technical things of live streaming, so this has been a very challenging experience. I've had some great help from a friend getting this set up. We even practiced the live stream, and what might happen is that I start hearing myself in the live stream, in which case I'll have to shut that up. But what I'm hoping to take you through today is a few key important concepts that you might find of value if you have been struggling with some of the things that I used to struggle with. So let me flip over to this screen. So we're going to discuss how to learn music, and I'm planning on making this series fairly regular. So this is what I'm calling my March 2023 workshop. So I hope you enjoy. Okay. So some of the questions that you might be seeking answers to include: how can I write better songs more easily? How can I understand chords better? This also includes harmony, how chords get put together. What is the best way to learn an instrument? And this also applies to singing. Singing is an instrument that's entirely of you. How should I be thinking of rhythm and beat? And why am I struggling to play what I hear is what I meant to write there. Why am I struggling to play what I want to play? So those are questions that I absolutely used to struggle with. And thanks to basically one key secret that breaks down into many parts, but the one key secret that it takes to be able to answer all these questions comes from music education research and the psychology of music performance. And so what I want to do today is to unpack some of that so that I can help some of you improve whatever you're trying to do with music, whether that's playing an instrument, singing, writing songs, improvising, any sort of music making. That's what I'm going to try and unpack for you today. So, a bit about me. I am a trombonist. I've been playing music or playing an instrument for about 20 years now. Actually, no, it's been longer than that, maybe about 22 years. So, and before that, I had no prior musical, like playing an instrument experience. I certainly had some grounding at school with singing songs, but I wasn't raised in a musical family. I didn't have access to instruments from the age of 2. So I didn't work a lot of this out for myself. I had some very good teachers, but I struggled right into my late 20s, trying to figure out, why am I struggling to improvise? Why can't I hear harmonic progressions, right? I was getting very frustrated with my ability to hear music in my head and to be able to play it. And so it was only when I went in my late 20s to study music teaching that I found there was a whole field of research around what it actually takes to teach music, and then as a result of that, how I could teach myself music better. So, what does the research tell us? Really, it teaches us 3 main things. That sound before symbol is the key thing, and that means that we should learn by ear first. There's a whole range of philosophies around how you learn an instrument to begin with. One of those methodologies that I started with was starting with notation from the very beginning. So I was started with a method book, which had this note here is B flat, and that goes there on your instrument. Okay, so learning by ear first is completely opposite to that philosophy, and that learn by ear principle is the way that music used to be taught. It's the way it's been passed down from generation to generation. A lot of the early principles of music education were based around learning by ear, not worrying about what the notation was for it until much later. So, learning music by ear, learning patterns from music. This is one of the key takeaways from Edwin Gordon, who we'll talk about in a moment, who wrote this wonderful book. Quickly swap to the full screen so you can see this. Learning Sequences in Music by Edwin E. Gordon. This is the 2012 edition. A treasure trove of insight and a summary of his extensive research into music education. So, learning patterns is one of the cornerstones of Gordon's work, and those are tonal patterns like bum bum bum, bum bum bum, bum bum bum, bum bum bum. Now, there's no syllables to that, there's no meaning to it, it's just a series of musical sounds. One of the key ideas that Gordon introduced was to assign meaning to these sounds through the use of different syllable systems. So for the patterns that I just sang, if we used a movable do system, they would become do, mi, do, re, ti, re, so, mi, so, do. Although I might have sang them in the wrong order, right? But it's taking the musical sounds that you learn through listening and through imitation, and then assigning the meaning with a system like solfege. And then later, once that's been learnt, then you associate the notation to those syllables. So it's a teacher's job to teach the sounds, to teach the syllables that go along with those sounds, and then to associate the sounds with the symbols later. Full screen me again. Moving on. This is a photo of Edwin E. Gordon. He was the author of that book that I showed you, and he coined this term called audiation. Now, audiation, this is the secret I was talking about earlier. This is the key to music learning. In his book and in his talks on audiation, Edwin E. Gordon stated that audiation is basic to all music education, and that meaningful music education can't take place unless audiation is used as the key principle. So, as a basic definition, and to really define audiation is quite extensive, but basically, audiation is hearing and comprehending musical sounds that are no longer physically present. So, there are many different types and different stages of audiation. The first one, back to me. Think of the first stage of audiation is like this. There's a mental after image of a sound after you hear it. So if I were to sing bum bum bum, there is some oral representation of the sound I made that's still within your minds, even though I'm no longer singing it. Much like if you were to stare at a light or an image of something and close your eyes, there's an afterglow or an after image left in your mind after looking at it. When you hear a musical sound, there's a momentary lingering of that sound in your mind. That's the first stage of audiation. Those sounds only become meaningful when we put the labels on it. So the pattern it might sound like a pleasant sound to you, but until you know that is sol la sol fa mi re ti do, and that you understand that that means that I've established a tonal center around Do, and by learning through music learning theory that you know that is in major tonality, only then can you actually start to audiate. Likewise, if you were to hear a progression like this, or perhaps you were to hear something more extensive like this. Would you be able to identify that you heard in the first chord, Do, Mi, So, in the second chord, Do, Fa, La, in the third chord, So, Fa, Re, Ti, So, Fa, Re, Ti, and then Do, Mi, So, Mi, Do, and then if you assign the labels later of 1, 4, 5, and 1, or tonic, subdominant, dominant, and dominant, then you would be audiating a chord progression. So Gordon outlines several different types of audiation. So here are a few, or here are the main ones. And he often describes these in terms of familiar and unfamiliar music, because sometimes doing dictations or writing music of familiar music is different for unfamiliar music, and similarly for improvising on or performing from memory. You can do certain things with familiar music that you can't do with unfamiliar music, and vice versa. So, one type of audiation happens when you are listening to music. Another happens when you are reading music. When you read music, you are taught properly, you should be able to look at the notation, and the notation should be able to sing to you. You should be able to hear the musical sounds just by looking at the musical notation. Another type of audiation happens when you are writing music from dictation. So as you are hearing musical sounds, and then you pause the sounds, whilst you are writing, you are hearing the musical sounds and hearing the patterns you are writing, you write them down. You also audiate when you are recalling music or whilst performing from memory. So this can happen when you are performing in a recital, for example. When I've performed solos on my instrument that have been memorized, I'm not memorizing a series of mechanical actions. I'm actually thinking of the musical sounds I want to play, and through my audiation and my practice, my body is compelled to make the movements to make those sounds. I've not just pre-programmed a bunch of movements that correspond to those sounds. Audiation can also happen when you are creating or improvising music. This can be live, but you can also create music in silence entirely in your mind. So it's quite common for people who are skilled at this to sit in silence and just imagine chord progressions or melodies. And in fact, writing music, the best way to do it is to do it this way. So these are several different types of audiation, and I'm sure you can imagine, well, at least one of these, if you're watching this, would be of interest to you, maybe multiple. So I just want to give you a quick example of notational audiation. So what do you think when you look at these patterns? So if you've been taught, like I used to be taught, when you see this, you see, okay, there's a treble clef, and there are these notes and these chord symbols above the notes. And the notes for the first pattern are C, E, C. And if I had a keyboard in front of me, I could go, okay, there's C. And the first pattern is C, E, C. Okay, so I've theoretically understood that, but that doesn't create a sound in my mind. Using the skills of audiation and music learning theory and sequences in music learning that Gordon developed, I now look at this and go, okay, I can see that based on the Do signature, this music, and based on the chord symbols, is in major tonality, and the tonal center is here, the note name is C, and the first pattern is Do, Mi, Do, and the C pattern indicates a tonic pattern in C major. The second pattern is Re, Ti, Re, and indicates a dominant function for a 5 chord. The third pattern is Ti, Re, Sol, which is also still a dominant pattern in C. And the final pattern is a tonic pattern, Mi, Sol, Do. And I can hear those sounds very clearly in my head. And if I had my instrument with me, well, I'm not set up to play it right now, but I would be able to make those sounds and I wouldn't have to think of note names. I would hear the sounds in my head and then I would be able to spontaneously play them without thinking about each individual note. Now, the same thing applies to rhythms when you're reading notation, and you can also, in the opposite order, think of a sound and then know how to write it down. So these are the key things to unlocking ability to write, play, or think music in any type of creative form and any style. So whether it's reggae or it's rap or it's classical orchestral writing or jazz improvisation, all music making relies on this skill. And you can extract patterns, and not just tonal patterns like you see on the screen in front of you, but also rhythm patterns. They're another type of pattern that gets combined with tonal patterns in order to create music. So that's an information dump. But that's what music education and what learning music is all about. It's about learning sounds and then learning how to assign syllables and meaning to those sounds. And then if you want to get into notation and theory, you apply the symbols to those sounds and that meaning afterwards, not before. All right. That is the secret to learn musical patterns. Now, I have nothing to sell at the moment. I plan on later having something to sell, and that is what I hope that some people who are watching this video might be able to help me with. So if you would like to help with course creation, I plan on creating a course, fundamentals of, or fundamental patterns. So for those out there who have some clear ideas about what they would like to learn, you can direct message me on Messenger and we can collaborate on the content you would like to see in a course. So I have my own ideas, but I would like some input and some help on this. And as part of that, you will get free lessons. So if you would like to be a part of that, then I would love to receive a message from you at some point in the future. All right, that's it for this workshop. I hope you got something out of it. I plan on uploading more of these. Until the next time, adios.